Grace arrives home early from work to find her husband Jack crying in the kitchen while on the phone. Hidden from view, she overhears him say, "I can't lie to her anymore." Her perfect life suddenly feels like quicksand beneath her feet. Married for 7 years with a beautiful home and successful careers, they'd been trying for a baby for the past year. The fertility treatments had been taking a toll, but their marriage had always been rock solid, or so she thought. Now everything she believed about her life was being questioned. The autumn leaves crunched beneath my feet as I walked up the driveway to our colonial-style home in the Boston suburbs. The crisp October air filled my lungs as I took a deep breath, clutching the folder containing the approval for my new fertility treatment. After 12 months of disappointments, hormone injections, and tearful nights, Dr. Miller had finally approved us for an advanced procedure that had promising success rates. I had taken the afternoon off work to surprise Jack with the news. Jack and I had been together since our junior year of high school. We were the couple everyone envied, the ones who made it through college long distance and came out stronger. After graduation, we both landed great jobs in Boston, got married in a beautiful ceremony in Cape Cod, and spent the next 5 years building our careers and saving for our dream home. 2 years ago, we bought this beautiful 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood with excellent schools, planning for the family we would soon start. When we decided to try for a baby, we assumed it would happen quickly. My mother had always told me that women in our family were fertile as farmland. But month after month, the pregnancy tests came back negative. After 6 months, we consulted with fertility specialists. The tests showed nothing conclusively wrong with either of us, just what the doctors called unexplained infertility. We started with the less invasive treatments first, but each failure hit us harder than the last. The last few months had been especially difficult. The hormones made me emotional and bloated. Jack had been supportive but increasingly distant, working later hours and traveling more for his job as a marketing executive. I blamed myself for the strain in our relationship, convinced that my obsession with getting pregnant was pushing him away. I hadn't told Jack I was coming home early. I wanted to see his face light up when I showed him the approval letter. Maybe tonight we could celebrate with a nice dinner and reconnect the way we used to before temperature charts and ovulation kits took over our lives. I used my key to quietly open the front door. I planned to surprise him in his home office, where he usually worked on Thursdays when his company allowed remote days. As I stepped into the foyer, I heard his voice coming from the kitchen. He was talking to someone, his voice breaking with emotion. I paused in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt what sounded like an important call. That's when I heard the unmistakable sound of my husband crying. In 7 years of marriage, I had only seen Jack cry twice, at our wedding and at his grandmother's funeral. "I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't lie to her anymore. She deserves better than this." My heart stopped. The folder slipped from my fingers, papers scattering silently on the carpeted hallway floor. I pressed my back against the wall, suddenly feeling like an intruder in my own home. "It's killing me to see her go through all this," Jack continued. "Every time I watch her give herself those shots, knowing what I know." Another sob broke through his words. I should have stepped forward then, demanded to know what was happening, who he was talking to. But fear paralyzed me. In that moment, I realized that whatever Jack was hiding could shatter everything we had built together. Instead of confronting him, I carefully gathered the fallen papers, slipped back out the front door, and closed it silently behind me. My hands trembled as I got back into my car. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. One thing was certain: I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by asking Jack directly. Whatever lie he had been living, whatever secret he was keeping, I was going to uncover it myself. The parking lot of the local coffee shop provided enough anonymity for me to collect my thoughts. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and logged into our shared cellular account. Jack and I had merged our phone plans years ago to save money, a decision that now gave me access to his call history. I scrolled through the recent calls, looking for patterns or numbers I didn't recognize. Most were work, related, or to numbers I recognized as friends and family. But there was one number that appeared repeatedly over the past 3 months. The calls were often late in the evening or during his lunch breaks, lasting anywhere from 5 to 40 minutes. I copied the unfamiliar number into a search engine, but nothing came up. Next, I tried social media. After several attempts with different search parameters, I found a match. The number belonged to a woman named Amanda Taylor. Her profile picture showed an attractive woman with shoulder-length blonde hair and a warm smile. According to her profile, she worked at Jackson Medical Solutions, the same company where Jack had been employed for the past 4 years. My stomach knotted as I clicked through her photos. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, single based on her profile information, and active in outdoor sports. There were several pictures of her hiking, kayaking, and at various charity events. She looked fit, carefree, and vibrant, everything I hadn't felt since we started our fertility journey. Could Jack be having an affair? The thought made me physically ill. I closed the app and leaned back against the headrest, trying to breathe through the wave of nausea. Jack had always been faithful, hadn't he? But then again, I never thought he'd keep secrets from me either. I started the car and drove aimlessly, my mind cataloging changes in Jack's behavior over the past few months. The late nights at work had become more frequent. There had been 2 weekend business trips that he claimed were last-minute marketing strategy sessions. He had been checking his phone more often, and sometimes stepped out of the room to take calls. All classic signs of infidelity that I had willfully ignored. After an hour of driving, I found myself outside the office of Westbrook Investigations. I had driven past it many times on my way to work, never imagining I would need their services. Without giving myself time to reconsider, I parked and walked inside. The reception area was simple but professional. A middle-aged woman looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with a private investigator," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Diana Russell, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and kind eyes that had likely seen every form of betrayal possible. "Tell me what brought you here, Grace," she said after I'd signed her confidentiality agreement. I explained about finding Jack crying, the phone conversation I'd overheard, and the calls to Amanda Taylor. Diana took notes and asked clarifying questions about Jack's schedule, the nature of his work, and our relationship history. "I'll need a retainer to begin," she said when I finished. "My standard package includes 3 days of surveillance, background check, and a preliminary report." I wrote her a check without hesitation, using money from my personal savings account that Jack didn't have access to. She promised to begin immediately and contact me within 48 hours with initial findings. The next 2 days were excruciating. I went through the motions of normal life, pretending nothing was wrong. Jack seemed unusually attentive, suggesting a date night and bringing me flowers. His kindness only made me more suspicious. Was this guilt? Was he compensating for betraying me? On Friday afternoon, Diana called. "I have some information. Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" The drive to her office was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I rehearsed what I would say to Jack when confronted with evidence of his affair. Would I leave immediately? Give him a chance to explain? The uncertainty was almost worse than the betrayal. Diana was waiting for me, a folder on her desk. "I've been tracking Jack's movements since our meeting," she began. "He's not having an affair with Amanda Taylor." Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by confusion. Then why the secret phone calls? Why all the late nights? "Amanda Taylor isn't a lover," Diana said, opening the folder. "She's a genetic counselor, specializing in reproductive health, and the late nights and trips weren't for work. Jack has been visiting medical specialists." She showed me photographs of Jack entering various medical buildings, including Boston Reproductive Medicine Center and the New England Genetics Institute. There were also photos of him meeting with a woman who matched Amanda Taylor's profile pictures, but in a professional setting that looked like a medical office. "I don't understand," I said, staring at the evidence before me. "Why would he hide doctor appointments from me? We've been seeing fertility specialists together for months." Diana's expression was carefully neutral. "That's something only Jack can answer. But whatever he's hiding, it appears to be medical in nature, not romantic." I left Diana's office with more questions than answers. The relief of knowing Jack wasn't having an affair was overshadowed by a new fear. What medical condition was so serious that he couldn't share it with his wife? Saturday morning, I told Jack I was meeting my friend Tara for brunch and would be gone for several hours. Instead, I parked across the street from our house and waited. If Jack was seeing doctors secretly, he might have an appointment today as well. Sure enough, at 10:30, Jack emerged from the house and drove away. I followed at a safe distance, my heart pounding as he made his way toward downtown Boston. He parked in the garage at Massachusetts General Hospital and entered through the main entrance. I waited 15 minutes before following him inside. The hospital was busy with weekend visitors, making it easy to blend in. I asked at the information desk about the fertility clinic, claiming I had forgotten which floor my appointment was on, but was told they weren't open on weekends. Jack wasn't here for a fertility consultation. Unable to determine where he'd gone without risking being seen, I returned to my car and waited. 2 hours later, Jack emerged from the hospital looking drained. Instead of heading home, he drove to a small cafe and sat alone at an outdoor table, staring at his coffee for nearly 30 minutes before finally driving home. That night, I waited until Jack was in the shower before checking his email on his laptop. We knew each other's passwords as a matter of practicality, though we'd always respected each other's privacy. That respect seemed quaint now, given the circumstances. I searched for emails containing terms like appointment, doctor, and medical. Several exchanges with various medical offices appeared. Most were confirmation emails for appointments, but I found a string of correspondence with a Dr. Lawrence at Boston General that mentioned test results and treatment options. There were also several PDF attachments of medical bills that had been sent directly to Jack's email rather than through our shared health insurance portal. With trembling fingers, I opened one. The bill was for several $1,000s from a specialist in reproductive genetics. Insurance had only covered a small portion, leaving Jack to pay the majority out of pocket. I checked our joint accounts and credit cards, but found no record of these payments. Jack must have been using a separate account or credit card I didn't know about to handle these expenses. The level of deception was staggering. As I continued searching, I found an email from Amanda Taylor, with the subject line, "Support Group Information." The email contained links to online forums and local support groups for men with genetic disorders affecting fertility. The shower stopped running, and I quickly closed all the windows and cleared the browser history before shutting the laptop. Jack came into the bedroom, hair still damp, and smiled at me as if nothing was wrong. That night, I lay awake beside him, my mind racing with terrible possibilities. Was Jack terminally ill? Did he have some genetic disease he was afraid to tell me about? The thought of losing him was unbearable. Despite the secrets and lies, I still loved him fiercely. By morning, I had convinced myself that Jack must be protecting me from devastating news about his health. Perhaps he had discovered he had cancer, or another life-threatening condition. Maybe he didn't want to add to my stress while we were going through fertility treatments. The scenario made a horrible kind of sense. For the next few days, I watched Jack with new eyes, looking for signs of illness. He seemed tired, but otherwise healthy. There were no pill bottles hidden away, no physical symptoms I could detect. But the secret doctor visits continued, and the calls to Amanda Taylor remained frequent. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, I decided to confront Diana with my new findings. I forwarded her the emails I'd discovered and asked for her professional opinion. Based on what you've sent me, she replied, this doesn't look like a terminal illness. The specialist, Jack, is seeing all work in reproductive medicine and genetics. And the support groups Amanda recommended are specifically for fertility issues. But we've already had fertility testing, I insisted during our phone call. Jack's results came back normal. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with his sperm count or motility. There was a long pause before Diana spoke again. Grace, is it possible those results weren't accurate? Or that Jack may have known something about his fertility before you started trying to conceive? The question hit me like a physical blow. You think he's known all along that he can't have children? That he's been letting me go through all these treatments knowing they wouldn't work? I can't say for certain, Diana cautioned. But the evidence suggests he's been dealing with some kind of genetic fertility issue that he hasn't shared with you. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this new possibility. If Jack had known he couldn't father children before we started trying, before we even got married, it would be the ultimate betrayal. He knew how much I wanted a family. We had talked about having children since we were dating in college. But I needed proof before confronting him. Acting on a hunch, I drove to our bank and requested access to our safe deposit box. Jack and I had opened it years ago to store important documents, birth certificates, our marriage license, insurance policies, and both of our medical histories. Inside the box, I found Jack's medical records from his teenage years. I had never had reason to look at them before. Flipping through the documents, I found what I was looking for. A diagnosis from when Jack was 17 years old. The medical terminology was complex, but the conclusion was clear. Jack had a rare genetic condition that made it virtually impossible for him to father biological children. He had known for 15 years, long before he married me, before he watched me suffer through months of invasive and painful fertility treatments. The betrayal was complete. Every moment of our life together suddenly felt like a lie. I replaced the documents, closed the box, and walked out of the bank with the weight of truth crushing down on me. It was time to confront my husband. I arrived home to find Jack making dinner in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I had overheard him on the phone just days ago. He looked up and smiled as I entered, but his expression quickly changed when he saw my face. Grace? What's wrong? I placed the copy of his medical records I'd made at the bank on the kitchen island between us. I know everything, Jack. I know about your condition. I know you can't have children. The color drained from his face as he stared at the papers. How did you? Does it matter? You've been lying to me for our entire relationship. My voice was surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. You knew before we got married. You knew before we started trying for a baby. You knew while I was giving myself shots and going through painful procedures. Jack sank onto a bar stool, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Grace, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you could watch me suffer for a year knowing it was pointless. How you could let me blame myself for our infertility when you knew the truth all along. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered. Then what exactly did you mean to do, Jack? What was your plan here? Were you just hoping for a miracle? Or were you planning to let me go through years of failed treatments until I finally gave up on having children altogether? Jack ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of distress I'd seen countless times but now viewed with suspicion. Every familiar habit, every expression of his that I'd loved now, seemed part of an elaborate deception. I was diagnosed when I was 17, he finally said. A routine physical for sports led to some tests, and they found the genetic abnormality. The doctors told me the chances of me ever fathering a biological child were less than 1%. And you never thought this was something I should know before we got married? The betrayal cut deeper with every word. I was going to tell you. So many times, I almost did. His voice cracked. But I was afraid of losing you. You always talked about wanting a big family, about having kids who looked like both of us. I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you wouldn't want me. So instead, you decided to lie to me for years? To let me go through painful, expensive treatments that you knew wouldn't work? Do you have any idea what those hormones did to my body? To my emotions? I thought maybe the doctors were wrong about me, Jack said desperately. They said there was a small chance. I clung to that. I thought if we just tried hard enough, if we found the right treatment. And Amanda Taylor? Who is she really? Jack looked surprised that I knew the name. She's a genetic counselor at my company's health clinic. I started seeing her for guidance a few months ago when I couldn't handle the guilt anymore. And the other doctors? The appointments you've been hiding from me? I've been looking for experimental treatments, getting second and third opinions, anything that might help. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Grace, everything I did was because I love you so much. I couldn't bear the thought of not giving you the family you deserve. Love doesn't lie, Jack. Love doesn't deceive. You robbed me of the chance to make my own decisions about my life, my body, and our future together. The anger that had been building finally erupted. Do you have any idea how violated I feel? You let me think there was something wrong with me. I never wanted you to feel that way, he said, tears streaming down his face. I hated myself every time you cried over a negative test, every time you blamed yourself. That's why I've been talking to Amanda and the specialists. I've been trying to find a solution. What kind of solution could possibly fix this level of betrayal? Jack took a deep breath. I found a specialized fertility clinic that works with cases like mine. They have a program where they can use a donor with similar physical characteristics to me. Same hair color, eye color, height, even similar facial features. The child would be biologically yours and would look enough like me that no one would ever question it. The revelation stunned me into momentary silence. So your solution was more deception? A donor that looks like you so we could pretend the baby is biologically yours? Were you ever going to tell me the truth? I was going to suggest donor sperm, Jack said quietly. But I was afraid you'd reject the idea, that you'd insist on having a child that was biologically both of ours. I thought if I found a donor who looked like me, it would be easier for you to accept. You don't get to decide what's easier for me to accept, Jack. You don't get to manage my reactions or control my choices by feeding me lies. I was shouting now, years of suppressed feelings breaking free. You've treated me like a child who can't handle the truth, instead of your partner, your equal. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was wrong. So wrong. I see that now. Sorry doesn't begin to cover this. I grabbed my purse and keys. I can't stay here tonight. I can't even look at you right now. Grace, please don't go. We can work through this. Can we? I don't even know who you are anymore. The Jack I thought I married would never have done something this cruel. As I walked toward the door, Jack called after me. Where will you go? To Tara's, I replied without turning around. Don't call me. I'll contact you when I'm ready to talk. I drove to my best friend's apartment in a daze, tears finally coming once I was alone in my car. When Tara opened her door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions, just pulled me into a hug and led me inside. Only then did I allow myself to completely fall apart. Tara's guest bedroom became my refuge for the next week. She lived in a small but comfortable apartment in Cambridge, close enough to my office that I could maintain my work routine while avoiding Jack. He respected my request not to call, but sent daily text messages expressing his remorse and asking when we could talk. I ignored them all. I needed time to process the magnitude of his deception and decide what it meant for our future. Each morning, I woke up hoping the pain would have lessened, but it remained raw and overwhelming. You need to eat something, Tara said on the 6th morning, placing a plate of toast beside me as I sat staring out her kitchen window. I'm not hungry. You've barely eaten in days. You're making yourself sick. Tara sat across from me, her expression concerned. Have you thought about what you want to do next? I honestly don't know. I picked at the toast without eating it. Every time I think about going home, about facing Jack, I feel physically ill, but I can't stay here forever. Maybe you should talk to someone professional, Tara suggested gently. A therapist could help you sort through your feelings. I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her advice. Later that day, I called my health insurance company and got a referral to Dr. Samantha Wells, a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. Dr. Wells was able to see me the following afternoon. Her office was warm and inviting, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. She was a woman in her 40s with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Tell me what brought you here today, Grace," she said after I'd settled in. I recounted the events of the past 2 weeks, starting with overhearing Jack's phone call and ending with my self-imposed exile at Tara's apartment. "Doctor." Wells listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What hurts the most about this situation?" she asked when I finished. "The lies?" I replied without hesitation. "Not just that he lied, but that he let me suffer, physically and emotionally, knowing the truth all along. He watched me blame myself, watched me go through painful procedures, all while knowing they wouldn't work. And do you believe his explanation for why he kept this secret?" I considered the question carefully. I believe he was afraid of losing me, but that doesn't excuse what he did. Fear isn't a justification for causing someone you love so much pain. "No, it isn't," Dr. Wells agreed. "But understanding his motivation might help you decide what comes next. Do you want to save your marriage, Grace?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on processing the betrayal that I hadn't allowed myself to think about the future. "I don't know," I admitted. Before all this, I would have said our marriage was worth fighting for. But now, I'm not sure there's enough trust left to rebuild on. "Trust can be rebuilt," Dr. Wells said carefully. "It takes time and consistent effort from both parties, but it is possible. The question is whether you want to put in that work and whether you believe Jack is capable of the kind of honesty and transparency that would be required moving forward." I left the session with that question weighing heavily on my mind. Did I want to salvage my marriage? Could I ever trust Jack again? Was what we had worth fighting for? Meanwhile, Jack had begun attending counseling sessions on his own. He texted me after his first appointment. "The therapist is helping me understand why I couldn't be honest with you. I know now that my fear of abandonment stems from my parents' divorce. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I'm working to become someone worthy of your trust again, whether you decide to come back or not." The message touched something in me. The acknowledgement that he needed to change, regardless of the outcome of our marriage, showed a level of self-awareness I hadn't expected. Still, I wasn't ready to respond. A week and a half after leaving home, I received an unexpected call from my doctor's office. "Mrs. Campbell? This is Dr. Miller's office. We have your test results from your appointment last month." I had completely forgotten about the blood work they had done during my last visit, before all this happened. "Yes? The doctor would like you to come in to discuss the results. Would tomorrow at 10 work for you?" Something in the receptionist's tone made me uneasy. "Is everything okay?" "The doctor prefers to discuss test results in person. It's nothing urgent, but he'd like to see you as soon as possible." The next morning, I sat nervously in Dr. Miller's office. He entered with a file in hand, his expression unreadable. "Grace, thank you for coming in." He sat behind his desk and opened the file. "The blood work we did at your last appointment showed some unexpected results. You're pregnant." The words didn't register at first. That's not possible. The last treatment didn't work. We were going to try the new protocol. Nevertheless, the hormone levels are clear. You're approximately 6 weeks pregnant. Dr. Miller's face became serious. However, there's something unusual about the genetic screening. My heart sank. "What is it?" "The embryo shows no markers for the genetic condition your husband carries." I stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? Based on these results, the biological father of this pregnancy does not have the same genetic profile as your husband. Dr. Miller looked uncomfortable. Given the fertility treatments you've been undergoing, I have to ask, were you aware that donor sperm might have been used in your last procedure? The room seemed to spin around me. No, absolutely not. We never consented to donor sperm. All of our treatments were supposed to use Jack's sperm only. Dr. Miller's expression turned grave. I need to review your file more thoroughly, but if what you're saying is accurate, there's been a serious breach of protocol. Let me make some calls to the lab that processed your last treatment. I left the office in a state of shock. Pregnant. With a baby that wasn't genetically Jack's. A baby I hadn't consented to conceive with donor sperm. The violation was staggering. When I returned to Tara's apartment, I found Jack sitting on the steps outside, looking haggard and exhausted. "Grace," he said, standing quickly. "I know you didn't want to see me yet, but it's been almost 2 weeks. I needed to make sure you're okay." I looked at this man I had loved for so long, this man who had hurt me so deeply, and made a decision. "Come upstairs. We need to talk." In Tara's living room, I told Jack about the pregnancy and the genetic test results. His face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions: shock, confusion, hurt, and finally, outrage. "They used donor sperm without our consent?" His voice shook with anger. "That's not just unethical, it's illegal." "Dr. Miller is investigating," I said. "But the genetic test is conclusive. This baby isn't biologically yours." Jack was silent for a long moment, processing this new information. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. "About the pregnancy? I don't know yet. It's a lot to take in." I hesitated before continuing. "But about us. I think we need to decide if there's anything left worth saving." "I love you, Grace," Jack said, his voice breaking. "I know I've destroyed your trust, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right if you'll let me. But whatever you decide about our marriage, I want you to know I'll support you through this pregnancy situation. What the clinic did was wrong, and they should be held accountable." His words, and the sincerity behind them, reached through the wall of anger and hurt I had built around my heart. For the first time since discovering his deception, I allowed myself to remember the good man I had fallen in love with. Jack had made a terrible mistake, driven by fear and insecurity. But in this moment, he was offering unconditional support, despite his own pain. "I need more time," I told him. "But I think maybe we should talk to Dr. Wells together. If there's any chance of rebuilding what we had, we're going to need professional help." Jack nodded, relief evident on his face. "I'll do whatever it takes, Grace. Whatever you need." As he left, I felt the first fragile stirrings of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with hard conversations and painful truths. The pregnancy and the clinic's violation added another complicated layer to our already fractured relationship. But perhaps, if we were both committed to honesty from this point forward, there might be a way through the darkness. The conference room at Burton & Associates law firm was imposing, with its mahogany table and floor, 2 ceiling windows overlooking downtown Boston. I sat beside Jack, both of us facing Patricia Burton, one of the city's top medical malpractice attorneys. "Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly," Patricia said, reviewing the documents spread before her. "You and your husband were undergoing fertility treatments at New Hope Fertility Clinic. At no point did you consent to the use of donor sperm. Yet genetic testing confirms that your current pregnancy resulted from donor sperm, not your husband's." "That's correct," I confirmed. "We were specifically attempting treatments using Jack's sperm, despite the low probability of success due to his genetic condition." "A condition the clinic was fully aware of," Jack added. "They had all my medical records." Patricia nodded, making notes. "And Dr. Miller has confirmed that the embryo does not carry your genetic markers?" "Yes. He's provided a written statement and copies of the test results. I pushed the folder containing Dr. Miller's documentation across the table. Patricia reviewed the papers, her expression growing increasingly stern. This is a clear case of medical malpractice and informed consent violation. The clinic performed a procedure fundamentally different from what you agreed to. They violated your bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. What are our options? Jack asked. We file suit immediately, Patricia replied without hesitation. What they've done is not just unethical, but illegal. You have an extremely strong case. I want them held accountable, I said firmly. But I'm also concerned about other patients. If they did this to us, they may have done it to others. Patricia's expression became thoughtful. You raise an important point. With your permission, I'd like to investigate whether there might be other affected couples. If so, this could potentially become a class action lawsuit. Jack reached for my hand under the table, a gesture of solidarity that I didn't reject. What would that mean exactly? He asked. It would mean bringing action on behalf of all patients who may have been similarly violated, Patricia explained. It could lead to broader regulatory scrutiny of the clinic and potentially higher damages. And what about the doctor who performed the procedure? I asked. Dr. Harrison? If we can prove he knowingly substituted donor sperm without consent, he could face criminal charges and loss of his medical license, Patricia said. But that will require more investigation. By the time we left Patricia's office, a legal strategy was in place. The lawsuit would be filed by the end of the week, and Patricia would begin the process of identifying other potential victims. The drive home was quiet. Jack and I had been attending joint therapy sessions with Dr. Wells for the past 2 weeks, slowly rebuilding our communication. I had moved back into our house, but was sleeping in the guest bedroom. The physical and emotional distance between us remained significant, but we were both committed to finding a path forward, whether together or apart. Are you okay? Jack asked as we pulled into our driveway. That was intense. I'm angry, I admitted. Not just at the clinic, but at the whole situation. None of this should have happened. Jack nodded, guilt flashing across his face. If I had been honest from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this specific situation, I agreed. But that doesn't excuse what the clinic did. They violated both of us. Inside, Jack made tea while I checked messages. There was a voicemail from Patricia, left just minutes after we'd left her office. Grace, I've just received some disturbing information from another attorney in my network. There appears to be at least 3 other couples who have filed complaints against New Hope in the past year regarding unauthorized use of donor materials. Please call me back as soon as possible. I played the message for Jack, watching his expression harden. This wasn't a mistake, he said. This was a pattern. The next day, we met with Patricia again, along with 2 other couples who had similar experiences with New Hope Fertility Clinic. Carol and William Peterson had conceived twins using what they believed was William's sperm, only to discover after birth that the children had blood types genetically impossible for William to father. Jennifer and Michael Dalton had requested specific donor eggs due to Jennifer's genetic disorder, but tests later showed their daughter carried the very condition they had tried to avoid. The pattern is clear, Patricia told us all. Dr. Harrison and possibly others at the clinic have been systematically ignoring patient consent forms and substituting genetic materials without authorization. Why would they do this? Carol asked, her voice breaking. Our babies are 3 now. We love them more than anything, but finding out they're not genetically Williams was devastating. Based on my investigation so far, I believe it's primarily financial, Patricia explained. Using donor materials is less expensive and has higher success rates than working with compromised sperm or eggs. Higher success rates mean more referrals and better statistics for the clinic. They played God with our lives to pad their statistics? Michael's voice shook with anger. Essentially, yes, Patricia confirmed. And there may be dozens more affected families who don't even know it. As the meeting continued, a plan took shape. The four of us would serve as the named plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit against New Hope Fertility Clinic, Dr. Harrison, and the laboratory that processed the specimens. Patricia would hold a press conference announcing the lawsuit and establishing a hotline for other potential victims to come forward. The day of the press conference arrived with a flurry of media attention. I stood nervously beside Jack as Patricia outlined the case to a room full of reporters. These couples trusted New Hope Fertility Clinic with their most intimate decisions about family planning, she stated firmly. That trust was systematically violated for profit. We intend to hold the clinic and all responsible parties accountable, and to ensure that regulatory changes are put in place to prevent such violations from happening to other families. When the reporters began asking questions, Patricia gestured for me to approach the microphone. Mrs. Campbell, as the lead plaintiff, would you like to make a statement? I hadn't prepared anything formal, but as I stepped forward, I knew exactly what needed to be said. This case isn't just about what happened to me or to the other families here today. It's about the fundamental right to make informed decisions about our own bodies and our own families. No medical professional has the right to override those decisions, regardless of their intentions. We're fighting not just for ourselves, but for every patient who places their trust in the healthcare system. By that evening, the story had gone national. My phone rang constantly with calls from reporters seeking comments, and more significantly, from other patients of New Hope who feared they might also be victims. Patricia's office was overwhelmed with calls, necessitating the hiring of additional staff to handle the volume. Through it all, Jack remained steadfastly by my side. He testified during depositions, openly admitting his own deception about his genetic condition, while emphasizing that we had never consented to donor sperm. His willingness to face public scrutiny and potential judgment for his own mistakes in order to support the lawsuit showed a courage I hadn't known he possessed. 3 months into the legal battle, Dr. Harrison's nurse came forward as a whistleblower, providing documented evidence that the doctor had routinely substituted donor materials without patient consent for at least 5 years. The evidence was damning, including internal emails where Dr. Harrison instructed lab technicians to use the backup donors for patients with low probability of success using their own genetic materials. With this new evidence, the case against New Hope strengthened considerably. The regulatory investigation expanded to include potential criminal charges against Dr. Harrison and several clinic administrators. What had begun as our personal tragedy was becoming a catalyst for significant changes in reproductive medicine oversight. Through it all, the pregnancy progressed. Despite the circumstances of conception, I had decided to continue with the pregnancy. The baby was innocent of the clinic's wrongdoing, and despite everything, I still wanted to be a mother. Jack, true to his word, supported my decision completely and attended every prenatal appointment. As we left a particularly emotional hearing, where Dr. Harrison had finally admitted under oath to the unauthorized substitutions, Jack turned to me in the courthouse corridor. Grace, I know our situation is still complicated, and I'm not asking for any decisions right now, but I want you to know that I see this baby as ours, regardless of genetics. If you'll let me, I want to be this child's father in every way that matters. In that moment, looking at the sincere devotion in his eyes, I felt the remaining ice around my heart begin to thaw. Jack had made a terrible mistake, but his actions since the truth came out had consistently demonstrated his commitment to honesty and to our relationship, whatever form it might take. Perhaps there was still a foundation on which we could rebuild. The morning sun streamed through the nursery window, casting a golden glow over the pale yellow walls. I stood in the doorway, watching as Jack gently placed our 3-month-old daughter in her crib for her morning nap. He leaned down to kiss her forehead before carefully backing away, always afraid his 6'2" frame would somehow disturb her rest. She's finally asleep, he whispered as he joined me in the hallway, pulling the door halfway closed behind him. You're getting better at this, I said with a smile. Last month it was taking you an hour to get her down. I've been practicing my lullabies when you're not home, Jack admitted sheepishly. YouTube tutorials. This small confession, freely offered without prompting, reminded me how far we'd come in the past year. What had begun as the most painful betrayal of my life had evolved, through countless hours of therapy, tears, and difficult conversations, into a new kind of relationship built on radical honesty. In the kitchen, I poured coffee for both of us, a quiet morning ritual we'd established after Lily's birth. These peaceful moments were precious amid the chaos of new parenthood and the continuing aftermath of the lawsuit. Patricia called yesterday, I said, sliding Jack's mug across the counter. The settlement is finally official. All the paperwork has been filed. The class action lawsuit against New Hope Fertility Clinic had grown to include 47 families, all victims of Dr. Harrison's unauthorized use of donor materials. The clinic's insurance had agreed to a $30 million settlement with additional funds set aside for psychological counseling for affected families. Dr. Harrison had surrendered his medical license and was awaiting trial on criminal charges. "How do you feel about it?" Jack asked, studying my expression carefully. I considered the question before answering. Vindicated, I suppose. But mostly, I'm glad it's over. I'm ready to focus on our future instead of fighting the past. Our future, Jack repeated softly, a note of wonder in his voice. After everything we'd been through, the fact that we still had a future together sometimes seemed miraculous to both of us. The road to reconciliation had been neither quick nor easy. After the initial shock of discovering Jack's deception and the clinic's violation, I had been consumed by anger and betrayal. The decision to try rebuilding our marriage had come slowly, in small moments of connection, amid the legal battle and my advancing pregnancy. Jack had done everything possible to earn back my trust. He attended every therapy session, answered every painful question with complete honesty, and supported my leadership role in the lawsuit, despite the public scrutiny it brought to our private struggles. Most importantly, he had learned to be vulnerable, to share his fears and insecurities instead of hiding behind deception. The support group is meeting tonight, Jack said, referring to the network we had helped establish for families affected by reproductive medicine violations. Do you want me to take Lily so you can go alone? Or should we get a sitter and both attend? Let's both go, I decided. The Thompsons are bringing their new baby, and I'd like you to meet them. One unexpected outcome of the lawsuit had been the community that formed among the affected families. What had begun as a group of angry, hurt people seeking justice had evolved into a supportive network of friends who understood each other's unique struggles. Together, we had advocated for legislative changes to strengthen informed consent requirements in fertility treatments, testified before state medical boards, and created resources for other patients navigating the complex world of reproductive medicine. As we finished our coffee, the doorbell rang. Jack went to answer it, returning with a small package. "It's from Tara," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a beautiful silver frame containing a photo of the three of us on the day we brought Lily home from the hospital. The card read simply, "To new beginnings. Love, Tara." Tears pricked my eyes as I showed it to Jack. Tara had been my rock throughout the past year, offering unwavering support as I wrestled with whether to forgive Jack and how to move forward. She had been skeptical of reconciliation at first, protective of me in my vulnerable state, but had gradually come to respect the work Jack was doing to make amends. "We should put this in the living room," Jack suggested, next to our wedding photo. Our wedding picture had been absent from our home for months after the truth came out. I had packed it away, unable to look at the smiling, hopeful couple we had been, unaware of the secrets between them. Putting it back on display 3 months ago had been a conscious choice, an acknowledgement that while that chapter of our story contained pain, it was still part of the journey that led us here. Later that afternoon, as Jack took Lily for a walk in her stroller, I sat at my desk to work on the memoir I had begun writing about our experience. What had started as therapeutic journaling had evolved into a book project, encouraged by our therapist and the many people who had reached out after hearing our story in the news. I typed the closing paragraphs of the chapter about Lily's birth. When the nurse placed my daughter in my arms for the first time, the circumstances of her conception seemed suddenly irrelevant. She was perfect, she was mine, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Jack stood beside the hospital bed, tears streaming down his face as he touched her tiny fingers with a reverence I had never seen before. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "like her mother." In that moment, I realized that family is not defined by genetics, but by love and commitment. Jack had made a terrible mistake in hiding his condition from me, a mistake born from fear of losing the future we had planned together. The fertility clinic had violated our trust in an even more profound way. But here we were, holding this miraculous child who would never have existed without both of those painful chapters in our story. Forgiveness didn't erase the hurt or magically restore trust. Those came later, built day by day through consistent honesty and the shared purpose of raising our daughter. What forgiveness did provide was the opportunity to create something new from the ashes of what we had lost. Not the same relationship we had before, but something perhaps stronger, tempered by fire, and shaped by a deeper understanding of each other's humanity. I saved the document and closed my laptop, feeling the familiar mix of pain and healing that came with revisiting our journey. A year ago, I could never have imagined writing these words, could never have envisioned a path from such profound betrayal to renewed commitment. When Jack returned with Lily, rosy cheeked from her outing, I met them at the door with a spontaneous embrace that encompassed them both. "What was that for?" Jack asked, pleasantly surprised. "Just grateful," I replied. "For second chances and new beginnings." That evening at the support group, I shared our story once again, not focusing on the pain or the legal battle this time, but on the healing process. As I spoke, I watched the faces of newer members, still raw with hurt and betrayal, and recognized the expressions I had worn a year earlier. "The hardest lesson I've learned through all of this," I concluded, "is that secrets and lies, even those intended to protect the people we love, ultimately cause more pain than the truth ever could." Healing began for us not when the lawsuit was filed or when justice was served, but in the moments of brutal honesty, when we finally had the courage to be completely vulnerable with each other. After the meeting, as we drove home with a sleeping Lily in her car seat, Jack reached across the console to take my hand. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Giving us another chance?" I squeezed his hand, thinking of the difficult year behind us and the uncertain but hopeful future ahead. "No," I said with certainty. "I regret that we had to go through such pain to get here, but I don't regret choosing to rebuild. Some things are worth fighting for." In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Lily, peaceful in sleep. Whatever challenges awaited us, whatever wounds still needed healing, we would face them together, with open hearts and honest words. The secrets were gone, the lies exposed, and in their place was something real, imperfect, sometimes painful, but authentic, in a way our marriage had never been before. Have you ever had to rebuild trust in a relationship after a significant betrayal? What helped you move forward, or what made you decide it wasn't possible? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who might find comfort in knowing they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you healing and truth in all your relationships.